Hello everybody, this is Mr. McCurry and this is our video series here, and we are coming down the home stretch of wrapping up Chapter 3. This video part is going to deal with Section 3 and continuing on with social change. So far we have talked about, in the last video, some of the sources of social change, or in other words, the things in society that can cause a culture or a society to undergo some sort of change. We are at the point now where we are going to be talking about diffusion and the concept of acculturation. Now, acculturation is something that is not explained in the textbook, but I added on because it does help a society change in some ways. As it says here, diffusion is something that we see in America quite often, and other cultures do to some extent as well around the world. As it says by definition here, diffusion is the process by which a cultural item spreads from one group to another, or one society to another. And of course, diffusion can occur in many ways. Today, certainly, diffusion can occur much quickly because of technology. We can communicate around the world very quickly. And as the previous video said, when it talked about globalization, we are no longer stuck within our borders when it comes to the spreading of ideas and the communication among different cultures. Now, there's some other more extreme ways of diffusion. Certainly imperialism, when one country goes around and picks up colonies and so forth, that can by force cause the spread of culture to one group to another. We talked about mass media. Certainly military conquest and wars is going to be a very quick way one culture is going to spread into another one. But anytime someone travels around the world, they take with them aspects of their culture and deliver them to wherever they're going. So tourism does play a role in diffusion. Any type of missionary work where we are sending people to teach people either religion or ways of growing food and so forth. Those are all part of the missionary work that can add to diffusion. And of course, again, the whole mass media and internet certainly improves communication. And anytime we speak to people around the world across the internet, we are in a way sharing aspects of our culture with them. So diffusion is a very common way that cultures can change. The two pictures there, one is baseball in Japan. Just the fact that they have baseball is an example of diffusion, because that was a cultural trait of America that spread to Japan, and now that is their national game. The fact that you can go anywhere in the world and see a McDonald's restaurant is another example of diffusion, because that is an American cultural item that has spread to their society as well. Acculturation is an interesting concept that can be applied on a macro level from a societal point of view, but it can also be applied to groups of people and individuals as well in terms of how people improve. And so let's talk about it a little bit here. Acculturation, as it says here, is the process of a culture that identifies a particular aspect of their culture that they decide is, or they deem to be, holding them back in some way. And those people or group of people then decide to replace those aspects with other traits, generally from other cultures, to help them advance. That is the concept of acculturation. So, for example, Irish Catholics in America, when they arrived in America, they had many traits that were generally seen in many Irish Catholics from Ireland that they brought with them to America. And a number of those traits were not very positive traits, and because of that, not many people wanted to be associated with Irish Catholics when they came to America. So many signs began to pop up, like the one in the photo here. It says, "Help wanted, no Irish need apply." So Irish Catholics were heavily discriminated against in America, largely because of the cultural traits and the stereotypes, and that held them back for the most part. Well, the Irish Catholics, with the help of the Catholic Church, began to kind of change themselves, began to recognize that some of the things that they were commonly doing in their culture in terms of behavioral traits were kind of getting them in trouble, or at least holding them back. And so with the help of the Catholic Church, and particularly Catholic schools, many of those traits began to be weeded away and replaced by more positive traits, and slowly over time those signs came down. So many history classes will talk about those types of signs as an example of early discrimination. But a more important question, I think, that many of the history books do not address is how did those signs come down? Because there was no government legislation outlawing those signs. There was no anti-discrimination laws that were appointed at that time. So how did those signs come down? The answer is the Irish Catholics made some changes themselves. They went through the process of acculturation and began to weed away inappropriate or bad behaviors that were leading to this discrimination in some ways, or at least a bad perception of Irish Catholics, and began to replace them with more positive behaviors, and therefore over time their perception as a culture began to become more positive, and there was no need for those signs because they were more valuable to society as a result. Same thing happened with many Jewish immigrants. Many of the people, the synagogues and the Jewish people in America realized that there was nobody out there who was going to help them, that they had to help themselves. And so many times the synagogues would meet a lot of the new Jewish immigrants when they first arrived to America and take them under their wing. And over time, take them into their homes and take them into their synagogues and teach them the proper behaviors of how to be an American because they realized no one else was going to help them. There was really no government assistance at that time, and so it really was upon the culture itself to help each other out, to weed out behaviors that were going to hurt them in America and replace them with better behaviors. So many cultural groups have undergone that change of acculturation, and it can be a very fast, sometimes a much faster way of improving because that change or that improvement comes from within the group of people instead of externally. So acculturation is an interesting concept. It's not in the textbook, but I think it does help a society, or at least in this case, in subgroups in society, to make some necessary changes in their life. Well, that's going to end up this video segment, and we'll probably have at least one more video to wrap up Chapter 3 when we talk about the rest of the sources of social change and then get into the factors that resist social change. Take care, everybody.